Okay, welcome everybody. As you can see on the screen today, we're here to talk about after the college acceptance. So helping you understand your financial aid offers and your college bill. You can see the website that we've created right here, mefa.org/college bound. That is a landing page that has all the tools we're going to talk about today right there, nice and convenient for you. So that's the only website that you need to remember right now. We have all the tools there, but plenty of great resources on mefa.org that I'll be talking about throughout today's webinar. So for those of you who are just joining us, just want to remind you that we are recording today's webinar and I will share it, the recording, as well as copies of the PowerPoint slides with you. So don't feel like you have to write everything down because you'll be getting all of this in your email. So just a couple of logistics. We do have everybody on mute today. If you do have a question, please write that in the Q&A. We did disable the chat feature so that I could just focus on one area to answer the Q&A. So please write your questions in there and we will answer those as we go. And there's other tools here if you need to do closed caption, if you need to leave the webinar, we will be recording it so you won't miss anything. And all of that is right there. So a little bit about MEFA for those of you who might not be as familiar with us. We are a nonprofit quasi-state authority, so we are self-financing. We were created in 1982, so we're nearly 40 years old now. And we were created to start with a loan program back in 1982, but since then we've gone on to offer lots of other great resources, such as savings plans, like the U plan and the U fund that some of you may have saved with, as well as an overall mission of providing guidance and education for families. So lots of tools, blogs, webinars, resources on the MEFA website for you to use throughout this whole college process. So congratulations to moms and dads who are on the line and any students who are on the line for getting into college. It's been quite a year for a number of different reasons, obviously. Going through a pandemic for students senior year in high school is not the way they had envisioned it. But hopefully their freshman year will be a little bit more normal than the freshmen who are in college this year, many of whom had to go to school remotely for their first year in college, which wasn't ideal. But congratulations for getting to this point in the process, and hopefully we'll get you over the finish line. So here's what we're going to talk about today, making sure that you understand your financial aid offers. If you haven't applied for aid, there are still options available, and it's not too late to apply for financial aid. We want to make sure that you understand how to calculate your balance due. So looking at your different financial aid offers and the cost at each school, I have a great tool for that to compare your awards and each college individually, side by side. And of course, I'm going to be giving resources and options about how to pay the bill. How do you make the numbers work? So developing a plan and a strategy to pay the bill. So just a quick refresher on financial aid and what types of aid you might receive in a financial aid offer. You may receive both merit and need-based aid, or you might receive just one or the other. It really depends on your family's financial circumstances, the student's academic admissions application, and of course the school itself and the resources they have available and the types of aid that they give out. So the first thing you may have received from some of the schools, and maybe not all, is merit-based aid. So that's typically going to be given out for the student's overall admissions application in honor of their academic achievements. But there are things like athletic scholarships, artistic, music scholarships, things like that. But most of this merit-based aid that's given out is based on the student's overall admissions application. Now, the criteria to receive merit-based aid is going to differ from school to school. Even within one college, they may have different levels of merit-based aid, different levels of scholarships that they give out. So the higher your GPA, the higher the merit-based scholarship. Now, usually merit-based aid has some sort of criteria for renewal. So usually it's a GPA of some sort, maybe a 3.0 minimum that the student needs to maintain. They may also need to stay in a certain major if it was given out from a certain department. For example, they got an engineering scholarship, but if they decide to transfer to become a teacher, they might not be able to keep that engineering scholarship. So it really depends on the school and the scholarship, but there are criteria for renewal. So you want to make sure that a student understands their responsibility to keep those scholarships. And then, of course, there is need-based aid. So not every school is going to give out merit-based aid. Many schools do. Some of the elite universities, like Ivy League schools, they don't give out merit-based aid because all of their students are, meritorious, but they give out a lot of need-based aid. So based on families' financial need. So need-based aid is based on those financial aid forms that you filled out, the FAFSA form, and many of you probably also filled out the CSS profile form. And need-based aid is determined by a family's ability to pay through standardized formulas. Now, most of the time, in most cases, most families aren't going to get 100% of what they qualify for, what they need, because there's just not enough to go around for everybody to get 100% of what they need. But hopefully, between the different award letters you have, merit and need-based aid, we can help you make the numbers work. Now, most of the aid that's given out nationwide is based on need, financial need. That would include the federal aid, state aid from the state of Massachusetts, if you live here in Massachusetts, as well as institutional aid from the college or university. Now, on your financial aid offer, you'll typically see all the aid that you're eligible for. So if you did not receive a merit-based award when you got your admissions letter, then you probably wouldn't see that on your financial aid offer. But if you did get a merit-based award, that would be on your financial aid offer as well. Now, a question I get a lot is, can we ask for merit-based aid if we didn't get it? And typically the answer is no, because schools are giving their best offers up front. If you were to qualify for a merit-based award, then the student would have received that already, but it doesn't hurt to ask the school if you're wondering why the student didn't receive it. But not every student at every school receives merit-based aid. But you will see first thing on your financial aid offers any grants or scholarships from the college or university. That's going to be the free money from the school. Then any other grants or scholarships the student might be eligible for from the federal and state government. Now that again is free money as well. You don't have to pay that back, but there could be criteria to keep that, such as minimum GPAs and needing to be enrolled at least half time, for example. You may also have on some of your awards what's called federal work study. Now, work study is a program for students to get a part-time job on campus, and they can work and earn that money to pay for some unbilled expenses like books and supplies. So in this mock award we have on the screen here, we see $1,500 as a work study award. So the student can earn up to $1,500. So typically the work study is not taken off the bill because the student still has to earn those funds, but it can be handy to help pay for the unbilled expenses. You may also see, and will likely see, some loan offers on your financial aid offers. So the federal direct loan, which is the federal direct student loan, you may see part of it could be subsidized, meaning there's no interest on that loan while the student's in school. And if you don't qualify for the subsidy, then the whole thing or part of the award might be unsubsidized. And I'll talk a little bit more about that loan in a minute on the next slide. So as you've probably seen already, the financial aid offers from schools to school can look different, not just in numbers and how much they're giving, but also in how the information is laid out. From some schools, you might have received a paper letter. Some you might need to go on the school's web portal to download it. It really depends on the school and how they're giving out their information. But it can be a little bit confusing when you're trying to line them up side by side. So I have a great tool to help you line up those awards side by side. So all of that award or part of it, you do need to accept or decline by the school's deadline, which is typically May 1st. I've heard of some schools this year extending it to May 3rd because May 3rd is a Monday, but make sure whatever the deadline is for the school the student's going to be attending, that you get your deposit in, and you also accept your financial aid offer. Now, if the student isn't going to be working or they already have a part-time job they don't want to give up and they don't need the work study, for example, then you might find, oh, well, we don't need to accept the work study, or we don't need to accept the unsubsidized loan because we don't want the student to borrow. So there are circumstances where you may not accept the whole award, but for the most part, most families accept the entire financial aid award. Now, a little bit more details about the federal direct student loan that we just talked about. I just mentioned. We do have, this loan is available for every student, regardless of the family's finances. Your financial eligibility will determine if part of that loan is subsidized, meaning interest is not going to accrue until after the student leaves college. The nice thing about this loan is it is one of the few ways that a student can borrow on their own without having a cosigner. So there's no credit check involved, and the student can defer this loan while they're in school. The interest rates are usually pretty low. This current year that we're in right now, the rate is fixed at 2.75%. And that rate is adjusted each year on July 1st. So we should be hearing next month what the new rates will be for your students next year. Now, as I mentioned, it could come in two different flavors, subsidized and or unsubsidized. So the subsidized portion I mentioned is interest-free, and the unsubsidized portion, or for some families who don't qualify for the subsidy, you may find you have the entire loan is unsubsidized, meaning interest will accrue while the student's in school, but they don't need to make payments on that interest and principal. They can defer those payments, or you can make voluntary payments on that principal, on that interest if you want to. So that way, if you pay the interest each quarter, then the student only has what they borrowed when they graduate, and that interest won't capitalize and be added to their loan balance when they graduate. There is a small fee deducted from the loan, a little over 1.5%. And students will need to sign their promissory note online at studentaid.gov, as well as go through entrance counseling to ensure they understand their rights and responsibilities as a federal student aid borrower. Now, I mentioned no payments are due while they're in school, and then they graduate. There's lots of flexibility with this loan, lots of different repayment options that they can choose from to ensure that they'll be able to afford their payments and make them on time, which is very important. Now, but there are limits on how much a student can borrow. They can't borrow tens of thousands of dollars a year as an undergraduate. However, as a freshman, they can borrow up to $5,500. Now, of that $5,500, up to $3,500 of it could be subsidized. And then the rest, or for some families, the entire $5,500 would be unsubsidized. And then the amounts go up each year as the student progresses in school. So feel free, folks, if you have questions, to type those in the Q&A, and I will stop periodically to answer those. Verification is something that some families may need to go through. You're not necessarily going to be verified or chosen for verification at every college, and some families might get lucky and not have to go through verification at all. But sometimes the Department of Education might select families for verification, and the colleges will reach out to you and let you know what they need for documentation to verify certain data points on your financial aid applications. So just send them what they're looking for. You have to comply with these requests, or else your financial aid offer will not be complete and will not be deducted from your bill until this piece in this process is complete. So some of the things colleges might be looking for: tax returns, transcripts. They might have you fill out a verification worksheet or provide business statements. But just make sure that you review all of the correspondence from the colleges and universities, and log into their web portal for any communications from the schools, because you might be getting the information there. So make sure that the student is checking their email and checking their web portal for any communications from the schools. So if you haven't applied for financial aid, it's not too late to do so. You can submit the FAFSA now. You can submit it anytime during the year to be considered for federal aid. Now, typically the deadline for state aid is May 1st. We'll see. We hear there may be a potential that they might extend that. So that's a good, that might be good news for folks who haven't filed their FAFSA yet, but make sure you do that. Even if it's just so that the student can borrow that $5,500 loan, or parents might want to borrow a PLUS loan, for example, you still have to fill out that FAFSA. So all that aid, federal aid, is available year round. Now, if your family is not applying for financial aid for whatever reason, we encourage you to do so. But if you choose not to, you may still be able, you can still use the college's payment plans as well as any private loans, which we'll talk about those options in a minute. Many colleges' deadlines may have passed for their own institutional aid at this point in the year, but you may still be eligible for aid from the school as well. So definitely give the school a call, see if you can still apply and fill out that FAFSA. So we did have a FAFSA festival this past Saturday, helping families with that. But feel free to give us a call at MEFA if you need help with your FAFSA, or the college or university can also assist you if you need assistance. We have great webinars on MEFA's website on how to fill out the FAFSA as well. So definitely check those out. Now, if the student was put on a wait list at one of the schools they're still very interested in, there are a few things for you to consider. Many schools, when they put together their wait list, it's usually a very long list. It could be thousands of students, and they might accept 5 off the wait list. Some schools might accept more than that. It really depends on the year and the students who did deposit at their school and what their enrollment goals are. Do know that if you do get off the wait list from a school, you may not receive any financial aid from that school. You'd still be eligible for federal and state aid, but you know, at some schools, particularly private schools, a lot of your financial aid might come from the school. So just know and find out from the school if they'll still give the same amount of financial aid, whether or not you come off the wait list, or if you were accepted early action, for example. It really depends on the school. It could be different from school to school. Now, you will need to deposit by the deposit deadline at one of the schools the student was accepted to. You may not find out about the waitlist until after you've deposited at that other school. If the student does get off the waitlist and you've talked about financial aid and everything looks good and you've said, yep, they're gonna go to this school they got off the waitlist from, you will lose your deposit at the other school that you've deposited at. But you do need to deposit at a school that the student's going to be attending so that you don't lose your spot. Now, if you've considered all this and decide, yep, you know, student's dream school, they're on the wait list, if they get off, they're gonna go, then you do need to formally accept your spot on the wait list. Usually the admissions office will provide you with those instructions, and, you know, keep working and communicating with the admissions office. Let them know of any updated grades, test scores, awards the student may have gotten to, you know, boost up their application. Write a note to the admissions counselor to confirm, you know, your strong interest in the school. Keep in touch through social media. So when it comes to the wait list, the demonstrated interest in a school can really, you know, come into play. And keep an eye, obviously, on your email for any updates from the school. Okay, so when you're calculating your balance due, there's a few things that you want to just be aware of. So the first thing you'll see on an award is typically going to be the A, but sometimes colleges may also provide you with the cost of attendance. So if you didn't receive that, you can find that on their website. And I'm going to bring up a tool to help you with that. But basically, when you're calculating what you owe to the school, it's going to be what they're charging you minus your financial aid and your enrollment deposit. And that's what's due at the school. That's not the entire cost of attendance, because there's going to be some unbilled expenses that we're going to talk about as well. So I'm going to bring up our college cost calculator here at MEFA. And you can see, just scroll here. I'm going to fill in for one school just for the sake of time. We don't want to take up too much time, but I will fill it in for one school just so you can see, you know, how the calculator works, and you can use this on your own. You can create a spreadsheet using the same fields if you wanted to add more than 4 schools, but it's a great way to put everything in black and white so that you're not confused with this letter and the layout on this one, and you got to, download this award letter from online, you got another one in paper, it can be a little confusing. So add up all your tuition and fees. There might be, COVID fees, different fees that the school charges, add those up. I'm going to pretend that we're looking at a private college here in the Northeast, which is going to be probably a little pricey, but hopefully after we deduct our financial aid, it will be affordable. So the annual cost should be on that letter that you receive from the school. Then we put in our room and board if the student is living on campus. So you do want to let the schools know if they're going to be living on campus. Schools are trying to figure this out right now because they want to make sure that students aren't too crowded in dorms. Probably not going to see as many triples, for example, because of the pandemic. They'll still be taking a lot of safety precautions for this upcoming year. But from what we hear from schools, they are going to be getting students back on campus and get in some sort of normalcy as much as we can next fall with vaccinations and things like that. So I'll put in the room and board, pretending the student is living on campus. So the room, that's going to be the dormitory, and the board is going to be the meal plan. And if the student doesn't use the whole meal plan one semester, you might want to consider lowering it or increasing it if that's the case for the next semester. So you can, change your costs there by making different decisions. So books and supplies are some of those unbilled costs that I talked about. And that there's usually some sort of line item on the cost of attendance that advises students to budget, $2,500 for books and supplies and transportation, for example. So I'll just put in 2,000 for the year, just as an example. And then transportation is another unbilled expense. All of these unbilled expenses are part of that cost of attendance. So that sticker price, if you will. And that is the number that colleges use to determine what you're eligible for financial aid. So the higher the cost, the higher your eligibility for financial aid. And transportation is going to depend on where the student lives and how far they have to commute to get to school. So obviously, if they're crossing states or crossing the country, your transportation cost is going to be a little bit higher than if they're going to one of the local schools nearby. So I'm going to pretend that they're going to stay local. So not a very high transportation cost. Now, health insurance here in Massachusetts is required for every student that comes to college here. So if the student is covered by the family's plan, then you can waive this cost on your bill. You should be receiving information with your bill on how to waive this cost through the school. Usually it's providing your insurance information, maybe through an online portal, depends on the school. But make sure that you do waive this cost if you don't need the school's health insurance, because it could be up to $2,000. So I'm going to put in 0, but just make sure that the student is properly covered, especially if the student is going to school out of state. You want to make sure that their insurance is going to travel with them and they're going to be fully covered. And if they're not, then you may consider buying the school's plan. And then other costs here could be, additional fees that you might want to put in there. I usually like to add those to the tuition and fees. If they're an art major, they might have extra supplies they need to get, or maybe you need a laptop. So I'll just leave that blank for now. Or maybe we do need a laptop. Let's just pretend we need a laptop here for the first year. And that's going to be $2,000. So then if you scroll down, you can see that the annual costs are automatically added up here. So you can, the calculator does the work for you. So you don't have to worry about that. And then we'll put in our gift aid. So this is the free money from all the different resources. So I'm going to put in some of the aid here. And then, if it's a private college, sometimes they might have a little bit bigger grant and scholarship, but again, their cost is also bigger than a public college or university. So you really want to compare apples to apples by going through the scenario to figure out what is my bottom line at each school, not just what does it cost, not just what did they give me in aid, but what is the true bottom line here. So let's pretend the school gave $25,000 a year for 4 years. And then if you have any outside scholarships that the student has received, you can add those in here as well. If the student applied for local scholarships with the guidance office, for example, you usually find out around graduation time, so you should be finding out soon. Any grants or scholarships that the student applies, receives do need to be reported to the financial aid office, any outside private scholarships. So we'll pretend we got a scholarship from local community. And I do have a slide on scholarships later in the presentation, so I'll focus more on that in a few minutes. And so there is our annual gift aid, deducted from our cost. Then we have our federal direct student loan. So you can see you can really line each school up side by side just by looking at the numbers here. So if I had other schools in here, you'd be able to see what their total cost is, how much each school is giving in the free money and gift aid, as well as loans. And then if you have other resources, such as maybe grandma, grandpa said, we're going to give you a little bit of money for college, or maybe mom and dad have saved, let's say in a 529 plan, for example. Let's pretend that they have saved, $40,000. So they're going to do $10,000 a year over 4 years. So we'll deduct that as well as we're trying to figure out what we still owe. So we have that annual cost was all over 77,000, which is kind of a big scary number. But once we start chipping away at it and, deducting the aid and the loans and any savings that we might want to put in, then we have a little bit more manageable number towards the bottom there. Now, again, work study is typically not deducted from the bill, but you can deduct it for the unbilled expenses. You can apply that towards that. Some colleges might put a plus loan, which is a federal parent loan, on an award, but just know that it's not financial aid. So we have some tips down here for you about that. It is a federal loan, it's credit-based, so you do have to apply for that. And you may choose to pay for school with a different type of loan, maybe a lower cost loan than the federal plus. So we'll talk about some options in a minute. But that's basically it for the calculator. Again, you can create your own spreadsheet. When you get your email follow-up from us, it will have a link to create a one-on-one appointment. If you wanted to schedule time with someone at MEFA, we can use this tool and go through your award letters with you. You can email them to us and we can help you out if you need help. So when you're comparing your results, again, as I mentioned, you want to look at that net price at each school and really talk about, what can you afford? What is realistic? Remember to consider 4 years of school. So it's an annual process. You have to apply for aid each year. If you're borrowing, you apply for loans each year, but you do have to do this 4 times at least, for most students. So just make sure you're considering, can we do this each year for 4 years? Will that work for our family? Because we want to make sure, that you're limiting borrowing as much as possible. Borrowing should always be a last resort above and beyond those federal direct student loans. And make a decision for your family that's going to make sense. If the student is going to be borrowing a lot, are they going to be able to pay that back when they graduate? Especially if they're going on to graduate school, might need to borrow more. So really think about those things and, kind of project it out. If you have questions, please type those in the Q&A and I will answer those as we go. Don't see any questions so far, but feel free to type those in. So once you figured out your balance due, then it comes time to figure out a payment strategy. And there's not one size fits all. There's not one way that everybody does it. A lot of families, most families are going to do a combination strategy. So looking at past, present, and future income. So when you look at your past income, money you've already made and maybe set aside in savings, you want to take stock of whatever you have. and don't compare yourself to everybody else, because not everybody's been able to save 100% of what they need. Some families haven't been able to save it all. So don't feel bad if you're in that circumstance, because a lot of families are in that circumstance. But whatever you have is good. It will go towards the bill. So you might have saved in a 529 plan, maybe you have some old savings bonds, dig those out. If grandma, grandpa, or aunts or uncles or godparents may have saved for the student, it's good to know what they're going to be able to contribute so you can help plan. So you want to utilize that as much as possible. If you borrowed through me, sorry, I didn't mean to say borrow, I mean save through MEFA, through the MEFA U plan or the MEFA U fund, then here is our contact info here. You can give us a call if you have a U plan. We can tell you what your certificates are worth at each of the schools the student was accepted to. And if they're not part of the plan, then you could cash out, but feel free to give us a call. And you may have also saved through the U fund, which is the Massachusetts 529 plan that is managed by Fidelity Investments. So we always encourage folks to give Fidelity a call, or whoever your 529 plan advisor is, give them a call to talk about your options and decide how you want to distribute those savings. Either use them all the first year and avoid borrowing. Some people do it that way, or spread it out over 4 years so that you have a little bit each year. It really depends on the family and how much it costs and how much you saved. So once you've looked at past income, then you can look at taking money out of your checking account each month, either just putting it in a easy to access savings account so that you can just pay each semester a lump sum in cash, or you could utilize the school's interest-free monthly payment plan, which is a budget plan that you can use to spread out all or part of your expenses over a period of time, usually 5 to 12 months. It's not a loan, it's just a way for you to spread out your payments. There's a minimum enrollment fee, usually $50 to $100, is no interest, it's not a loan. And those plans typically start in May, June, or July. So soon after you deposit, you'll want to, get on that plan if that's part of your payment strategy, and get started on making those payments so that the sooner you start, the smaller your payments will be. But you should get information about the school's payment plan when you get your bill, and it should be on their website as well. So once you've looked at past and present income, exhausted those resources, then you'll look at future income in the form of borrowings, using future payments in your checking towards a loan program of some sort. And a lot of families do need to borrow in some way, shape, or form. We do say, borrowing's the last resort, but we know that most families do need to borrow. So I'll talk a little bit about borrowing, but we do have a couple great webinars coming up. You don't need to apply for any loans right now until you know where the student's going. And it is a pretty quick process with instant credit decisions, because everything is online now with education loans. So we will have some great webinars coming up in June and July. It's the same webinar on comparing loan options, which I'll go through a great detail about, comparing, looking at disclosure statements, things like that. So definitely sign up for that. If you're looking at borrowing, we can help you with that, or give us a call and we can talk about it over the phone. But you will need to have good credit in order to borrow above and beyond that federal direct student loan. So beyond that, most of these education loans, well, all of them really are credit-based. So you would need good credit to qualify. Typically, students 18-year-old is not going to have credit to qualify for loans on their own. So they'll 99.99% of the time will need a co-signer. So we usually recommend that. And of course, borrow the minimum. It's an annual process, but you do want to think in terms of 4 years, not just one. So if the first year you need to borrow, when you realize, I can swing that payment, then multiply it by 4 in your head and ask yourself, can I swing 4 years of this payment? And that'll be a true testament of whether it's a good financial fit for you or not, this particular school. And if you're co-signing, this is for moms and dads, if you're co-signing for the student and expecting them to pay the co-signed loans back, Just make sure you're considering their post-graduation plans. Are they going to be going on to graduate school? If so, they won't be able to make payments on any loans that are coming due. Mom and dad will have to help with that, because we want to make sure that the payments are made on time, and students who are in grad school, going to medical or dental school, they're just not going to be able to work to make those payments. So think about things like that. Now, on the flip side, if a student is going into a career where they might be making pretty good salary, then they might be able to help mom and dad with those loans. So it really depends on the situation. Starting salaries, things like that. There's fixed rates, variable rates. The further you push out the loans, you can defer loans, you can do interest only, or you can start making payments while the student's in school. It really depends on what's going to fit for your budget. And I do have a great tool right here. I see a couple questions. I'll answer those in a minute or two, but feel free, folks, to type in any questions here. So this is MEFA's loan payment calculator. Now, many schools have lender lists on their website, lenders that they worked with in the past, lenders like MEFA, but you can borrow through whoever you want. It really is up to you to make that decision. I'm going to show you the MEFA program because that's what is on our website and our calculator, but feel free to shop around. MEFA does have very good low rates because we are a nonprofit, but we do want to make sure that that you do your shopping and you feel comfortable with the decision you're making. So I'm going to pretend that we are borrowing $20,000, or at least playing with the numbers here for $20,000. I like this tool because you can play around with different numbers for each school scenario. So you might need to borrow 20 at this school, maybe 15 at this school, and maybe 40 at another school. You can run the numbers and see what those payments would look like with each school option that you're looking at. So 4 years before graduation, I'm going to put that my credit profile is good. So that's kind of right in the middle. But rates are based on the repayment option and your credit profile, so your credit score. So the higher your score, the lower your rate. So MEFA's interest rates start at 3.75 and do not go higher than 5.75 fixed for the loan that you push out the furthest if you defer it. Excuse me. But you can see here on our little chart that we have 5 different repayment options at MEFA, so you can really run the numbers. And I find that when parents, they do think they might need to borrow, just looking at the calculator here and looking at the payment options, sometimes it gives them a sense of relief to know, okay, there is an option to pay this amount if I need to borrow. In these, maybe these monthly payments are, reasonable or at least doable for a family, where they're not going to go into too much debt or really max themselves out. So the 10-year loan is obviously going to be the cheapest because you're paying it back the soonest, and it does have the lowest interest rate. But if you needed a little bit lower payment, but you also want to get a great rate, you can do immediate repayment over 15 years versus 10 years. And that means you're making payments while the student's in school. And then it goes up from there if you want to do interest only or defer payments while the student's in school. You can see the rates grow a little bit. But an important line item here is that total cost of the loan. That is the amount you'll pay if you make the minimum payment for the full term of the loan. Just like with a mortgage, you look at that big scary number at the end that you'll end up paying. But you can reduce that number by making larger payments, paying it off sooner. There's no prepayment penalties for education loans. So this is the worst it will be, but you can definitely, spend less if you make larger payments or bulk payments. So that's a great calculator, and we can run those numbers over the phone with you as well if you need help. But just to sort of wrap this part up, and then we'll move, I'll answer a few questions. With the combination strategy, if we owe $20,000, if we were to use a loan, we could see in the past loan payment calculator, if we borrowed it all, it'd be about $200 a month. I just use that round number, $100 a month per $10,000 that you borrow. And maybe you can afford more than that $200 a month. You can afford more than that minimum loan payment. If you can, then don't borrow the full amount that you owe. Put some on a payment plan or pay some down in cash. Use your savings. If we were to use the full 20,000 on a 10-month payment plan, that would be 2,000 a month over a 10-month plan, which might be a little bit too steep. Wouldn't have to borrow in that case, but maybe $2,000 a month is a little too steep. So in this situation, in this example, this family has said we can do more than 200 a month, but we can't quite do 2,000. We can do 600 a month. That's what we can afford. So they're going to chip away by adding in any savings that they have. So in this example, student saved over the summer, they put down 1,000. Mom and dad maybe saved 16,000. So they've decided we'll do 4,000 a year over 4 years. So there's 5,000 off our bill. Then we're going to do a payment plan for 5,000 at $500 a month over 10 months, interest free. It's not a loan. So there we have, our bill is chopped in half before we've borrowed. So borrowing is always going to be the last thing you look at. And so we do still need to borrow in this example, but it's half the amount of the balance. So there's our affordable monthly payment, $500 a month on the 5,000 payment plan and $100 a month on the $10,000 loan. So there's our affordable payment of $600. So let me just say, I have a couple questions real quick. So we do have a question about appealing for aid, which I will answer in just a minute when we're talking about the financial aid office. I have some good advice for you there. You can definitely appeal if you need to appeal your financial aid. So another question, if the student is living off campus in an apartment, for example, can you use the 529 funds from a college savings account? And the answer to that is yes. You can have the 529 provider, if that's, we'll just use that as an example, and have them send the funds to you to pay for those off-campus expenses. And then you can also have them send money to the college to pay for the build expenses. So that's the same case with a loan as well. If you need to borrow for off-campus housing, you can do that. In a case of MEFA, for example, you can build that amount into your loan. We have to send all the money to the school, and then the school will refund you for those off-campus expenses to pay. So you can use loans and savings to pay for off-campus expenses as well. And even some of the unbilled expenses like books and supplies and things like that. So feel free to type in some more questions, folks, and we will answer those as we go. Good questions. And I'll talk about appeals in just a minute to answer that question, because it's always a very good question. So the timing, so what's next? Your fall semester bill is going to be sent in June or July and due in July or August, 3 to 5 weeks later. Check the school's portal if you haven't gotten a bill. Usually they come out in June or July. If you do need to borrow, give yourself a good 2-week cushion before the bill is due, just in case there's something funky on the credit report, the loan doesn't go through, or you might need to get an additional co-signer. Sometimes things like that happen. So just give yourself some time. The process is quick with a MEFA loan, for example. It's an instant credit decision, but don't wait until the day before the bill is due. And sometimes if you apply for your loan early enough, the school may even take that loan off your bill, loan amount off your bill if it's already received by the school. And make sure you set up your payment plan according to the school schedule. So now's about the time each year where parents are looking at the bill and they say, okay, where's more? We need more scholarships. We need some of that free money. And hopefully the students have applied through their local community, through the guidance office, and taking care of that. That's always the best place to start. You should never have to pay anybody to do a scholarship search for you. Go to any nonprofits that you're affiliated with, your employer, see if they have tuition benefits. Some employers now are providing education loan payments through different organizations, or maybe even giving money towards college savings accounts as an employee benefit. Students thinking of maybe going to grad school, they might have tuition benefits for grad school later on, or undergrad. So, exhaust all your resources, any religious or affiliations that you may have, civic organizations, Knights of Columbus, Pop Warner football, whatever it might be. definitely, check all those out and see what they might have for scholarships. Then you can look online for the national scholarship searches. We have some great resources at MEFA Pathway, which is MEFA's free college and career web planning tool. And there is a scholarship search there that you can use. And we have a couple other websites here, such as College Board and FastWeb. Follow MEFA on Facebook and Twitter. We're always sending out scholarship alerts. But this is a good way to, continue. Basically, these search engines work. You put in demographic information, it will send you emails with scholarships the students might be eligible for. There's going to be more competition for these because they're national in scope and a lot more students are applying, but it's worth the work. And then here in Massachusetts, again, you'll get copies of these slides, so you have these websites. But the public school option is a great option here in Massachusetts. We have public colleges, universities, and community colleges at every end of the state and every community, so that you can commute, save a little bit money on room and board, whether it's a four-year school or community college. Mass transfer makes it easy to transfer all your credits from community college to one of our four-year universities. And if the student does well getting their associate's degree and gets good grades, they might even get tuition credits at the four-year school. And some community colleges in Massachusetts have affiliations with some of the private colleges in their community as well. So definitely take a look at that option, particularly if the student isn't quite sure what they want to do. Maybe they want to, boost up their study habits and get some credits under their belt before they make the investment of a four-year school. Community college is great for that here in Massachusetts. They're great schools. Tuition break is good if the student's going out of state and is looking at public college out of state. And maybe the school doesn't have the same, maybe the public college out of state has a program that is not offered at any of the in-state schools here in Massachusetts. So you might be able to get a reduction in that out-of-state cost, because there is a big difference between whether you live in state and out of state for public colleges across the country. Of course, if you're a resident of state, you're going to get a much better tuition cost, lower tuition. So let's talk a little bit about appeals. We had someone ask if it was, worth the effort to appeal. And it really depends what you mean by appeal. So there's two ways to look at it. And the financial aid office can be a great resource. And these are the folks that you'll want to talk to if you need to appeal. Now, it could be as simple as, we just can't make the numbers work. It's too expensive. Is there anything else you can do? That's not really negotiating. That's just asking for help and trying to come up with a plan to pay. But there could be legitimate changes in your family circumstances where you would need to appeal your financial aid award. And it's not just now when the student goes to school. It could be 2 years from now when the student's a sophomore or junior. Maybe mom or dad loses their job and you need to appeal your financial aid then. You can do it at any point in time while the student's in school. If you have a change in circumstances, you should definitely let school know. Especially this year, schools, they need to know what's going on. There's only so much you can put on a financial aid application. And so there might be more to the story than what you were able to put on there. And also, especially if you apply for financial aid in the fall, maybe things are different now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe there's been a job loss or something like that. Let the school know so that they can run the numbers based on your current circumstances. But in order to appeal your financial aid award, you do have to get in touch with the financial aid office. They usually have a process. They might have a form for you to fill out. They'll definitely want, some documentation so that they can, set your award based on your current circumstances. You can definitely give them a call. I recommend setting up maybe a Zoom appointment if you're looking at appealing, or if you, just need help understanding your award. You can do email or chat. A lot of these schools are working remotely, just as everybody else is. So, an email to get started might be a good way just to break the ice and make an appointment. We held a great webinar a few weeks ago on financial aid appeals and paying for college. We had a panel of great schools, Northeastern, we had Stonehill, Dean College, Worcester State was on there. We had some great folks on our webinar. that were able to help. Amherst College was on there as well, that we're able to provide great advice for families on how to manage this whole appeal process and what schools consider. So that is a great webinar that's on our YouTube channel and on our website. If you want to watch the recording, it would be well worth your time. It was a great webinar. So hopefully that answers questions about appeals, but if not, feel free to type your question again, or type another question in the Q&A, and I will answer those as we go. So what's next? Make sure that you're paying your deposit by the college's deadline. Typically May 1st is a national deadline, but check with the school. Whatever deposit you make will come off your fall bill. You see students here with mom and dad at the kitchen table having what we call kitchen table conversation about how they're going to make the numbers work. It's important at this point to be honest with the student about what's affordable, especially if you have other students coming down the road that need help with school, you know, to understand what mom and dad can contribute. And utilize MEFA as a resource. We have our website I told you about, mefa.org, College Bound. It's going to have, if you go to that site, the loan payment calculator I showed you, the college cost calculator, loan options, information about financial aid. So definitely check that out. If you want to give us a call at any time, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, we're available if you have a quick question, or email us at collegeplanning@mefa.org. So there's a number of different ways you can reach us and get help from the MEFA team. And the email I'm going to send you will also have a link to the virtual appointment request, which is notated here. So if you want to schedule a one-on-one appointment with MEFA, we can do a Zoom call. You can show us your award letters, and we can help you out that way as well. So here's all of our social media channels that you can connect with us on for Twitter alerts, scholarship alerts, and webinar recordings, for example. And with that, I'm going to end the formal part, the presentation piece of it, the agenda, and I want to open it up for Q&A. So please type. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here. So we have the phone number and email here for you. So please type your questions in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer them. So here is MEFA's 800 number again, our email. If you found any of our MEFA webinars helpful, we'd love to get your Google review. Please send that on. Usually it's in our signature, so when I send you your email, I'll have a link there, but we'd love to get your feedback. And I'm gonna wait and see if we have any questions. Don't see any coming in, so I'm gonna leave it open for another few seconds if anybody has any last minute questions. For those who do need to hop off to end their lunch hour, or lunch break, I wanna thank you for coming today and joining us. I hope this was helpful. Hopefully you feel empowered with a lot more tools to utilize and resources available. And I don't see any questions coming in the Q&A chat. So I'm going to end the webinar for everybody, but you will be hearing from me with an email with the recording and a copy of the slides. So thank you for coming, everybody. Have a great day, and good luck with your search and making that final decision if you haven't already. We wish you and your family well. Have a great day. Thank you.